whatever. I'm just a rock guy that likes a bunch of stuff. So I typically, well, let's go back even further. I have a pretty solid foundation in music theory. I used to go to libraries and take books there. I taught myself theory and stuff. But over time, I noticed, okay, this is my strongest key. No, now this is my strongest key. If I go and play with somebody, like we're gonna play in D minor, I was like, oh shit, I don't know that key. So it got to the point where I really couldn't speak the language universally with all 12 keys. So I really got into intervals and started to understand the relationship between notes. That became the key to everything. Unlocked everything. Everything is some sort of math. This to that is that, and that's what I became obsessed with. And I have very specific intervals I like to use. I love pentatonics, of course. Sometimes I use that as a little shortcut, or at least a sort of a touchstone, or a lighthouse, if you will, in a foggy sea of chords that I have no idea how to play over. And I really started to lean into tension and understanding what that is and how that would kind of make me feel. For example, I'm still learning how to use this thing. Okay, so imagine, if you will, an A minor. So I think everybody would probably play over that a little differently. Most things I would hear on the radio as a kid. Before I played guitar, it would have been, my dad listening to Led Zeppelin. Just say, Jimmy Page might play like, which is awesome, which will always sound awesome. My chord with pentatonic over it, chef's kiss every time. But I remember, even as a kid, thinking, oh man, what else you got? For example, like hearing a 7. If I just played, imagine waking up in the middle of the night, you have to pee, and all of a sudden you hear this. It's a little uncomfortable, a little bit uncomfortable, and you stub your toe and you scream and you wake the whole house up. But that was something that was always very attractive to me, is that tension, and then like being able to kind of release that tension, manipulate it, much like getting up in the night to pee. Oh my gosh. Improvising and peeing, same thing. So I would explore with that as much as I possibly could. I'd get into like the minor second or the major 6 or the flat 5, to the point where that's what I want to hear. Let's say again, A minor chord. Maybe I want my line to sound like this. Knowing that everywhere. And all that is pentatonics with a flat 5. I'm really focusing on that E flat in this case. And then finding a way to use that in a chord, because that was always the tricky thing, is, okay, I can use the note, but now how do I kind of incorporate that into the harmony? So let's say, putting E flat in an F chord, which is diatonic to that key. Normally it's that, but if I add an E flat to it, all of a sudden now it becomes a dominant chord. So now you have that Stevie Ray Vaughan change it thing. That kind of thing. And knowing how to use that now. Okay, so it's like I can play practically with a flat 5 instead of it being an accidental. And I would continue on with that. So now, let's say the 6, which is in this case an F sharp. Knowing that it's normally D minor in that key, but with a 3rd, or a 6 in this case, is now D major. So now I can sort of imply other harmonies with just that tension. And then the cool thing about that, I'm rambling of course, is it will spread it across the neck and change your fingerings, change your ear, change the way you play, change your improvising, and so on and so forth. So I'm thinking always in terms of tension, very specific intervals. I like the 9, anytime you hear it, can't go wrong. Those kind of things. Quick story. This will kind of maybe bring it all home. A couple of years ago, I was playing with this band at the rehearsal space. There's 3 guitar players in the band, overkill. And I went in just to play with them. And we were all playing on an E minor chord, so. It's just been like, and the first guy maybe goes to play and he goes like this. it's a game here. Ghost, baby, Everyone's like, yeah, man, you sound great. Second guy goes up. Little Guthrie at the end there. And then I went up to play, and I played one note. And I remember when I played just one stupid note, and everyone went, ah, because it was like we hadn't heard tension in like 5 hours. So I just played, and that would be. And as soon as I played that one note, you could, like, the energy in the room changed, and yep, and it just felt so fucking good. And that kind of reaffirmed, like, you don't need. Well, I always overplay. It's just who I am. But you don't need to, as long as you kind of have just these like strategic moments of tension and try to release that tension. Does that help at all? Tension there. One more question. Ooh. Fight to the death, guys. What they did. You, sir.
Hey. One's a statement and another's a question. So firstly, I'd like to say that I really enjoy your music with Osmanthus. Is that the name of the project?
Hey! You nailed the name too.
Oh, beautiful. Thanks.
I have a band with my wife. It's called Osmanthus. Anyway, go on.
And would you like to talk a little bit about your journey as a vocalist and at which point you decided to add that into your project?
You're one of the real ones. You know everything.